Yo, what's going on? Everybody out there in social media world. We are live on YouTube. We are live on X, formerly known as Twitter, and we are live on Facebook with my brother, Y, the legend, the one syllable, the one letter with the question mark. You know what I mean? The ever-present living legend, man, living artist, artivist, community builder, organizer, man, social conscious healer, and all things, man. My dear brother Y is here. We are in the chat today. We are going to talk about the intersection of art and activism. And my specific question, or is Ken's creativity really drive social change? Now, there are tons of examples in history. However, there are folks today who seem to be forgetting, seem to be moving away from the art, seems to be moving away from focused on the intellect, focused on all of the other stuff, which is all great, which is all necessary, which is all part of the transformation that we need in society today. But you can't forget art. You can't forget, like the essence of who we are, man. I just shared something on my social media, on my Facebook, that said, about babies, like before babies talk, they sing, right? Before they walk, they talk, right? So we're all artists. Pablo Picasso said we are all artists. The problem is that we forget. So without any further ado, we got Brother Y here. Brother Y, give us a short intro. Who are you? Where you from? And what brings you to this conversation? Or why did you agree to join this conversation with me tonight?
Well, peace. I could start the remarks with the art till I dearly depart. It was all a vision, 2 ears and 1 mouth. As Nori said, you got to listen. It all really started with divine intuition back in Jamaica. Like most artists, got caught up in a chase for paper, but I realized it was something greater. So through days, I had to travel and navigate, moments I hesitate, thoughts I had to regulate. I got skills, let me demonstrate. But it's always art. It was art from the start. It was art from the beating of the heart. Art is a connection. Art is really a perception. It's how you look at things. It's how you view the world. Art is really necessary for all the boys and the girls. Everybody was born an artist. But some of us start this and we don't finish. But I'm just here to continue. It started, as a linguist with words, bending them together. But then I like this thing called meter that creates a flow that lets you go and lets you grow and lets you know. And then you hit the bop, 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 it ups, and it doesn't get spoken. But that's when the promises get broken to ourselves that we had as an inner child, and those situations may have gotten wild and vile and caused us to change our style and profile. We just have this creativity that is always innate to make us great. If you don't hesitate, it could happen. It could conjugate. It could turn the past to the present to a lesson as precious as a penny of peasants for adolescence. So it's all here. It's all in a moment, and it's a flow. We're all drops that make the ocean. We're all stars that make the sky, and that's me. Why?
Yo, this guy here, man, special breed of human, special breed of man, special breed of artist, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate that intro, my brother. So yeah, I mean, I like to jump right into it, bro. So right, you are an 80s baby.
Yes, sir.
Right, born in Queens, right? Born during the time
Southside, something we out here.
During the time when a lot of things was going on, right? Right, crack epidemic in the hood, right? A lot of murders, a lot of violence, a lot of crime. And we were also born at a time when hip hop was shifting, right? Like, hip hop was shifting. Hip hop is an art form that initially was used to bring people together, to liberate people, to express not just the realities of our conditions, but our hopes and ambitions. Ooh, that's a bar. Right. So talk about it from that perspective, right? Talk about you growing up in Queens, but also falling in love with hip hop, falling in love with art, right? You spoke about music classes and things that you took. Like, what did you notice about that shift when art went from, or when music specifically went from a tool to liberate to a tool to oppress, and we lost that sense of cultural awareness in our activism and our music specifically? Like, how do we get here? How do we get back there? And why was that time so significant?
As you said, just growing up in whatever place and era you grow up in, it's what you know, right? So what we first learn when we come into these human suits is really an experience and a journey to find ourselves. So growing up in Jamaica, by nature, before I knew the word hip hop, my mom worked in the Coliseum block when the Wu-Tang shot the ice cream video. My family's of Guyanese descent, so it was house parties. My dad is one of 7. My mom is one of 8. So I had mad cousins, different generations were all around. So, people were into different things. And just growing up in that melting pot, there was so much energy and so much multicultural energy. It was there. Now, of course, in that era, I'm product of the public schools. There was no music program. So I wasn't exposed to music except through writing. Shout out to actually my 2nd grade teacher, Miss Schechter. She was like, yo, we were doing one of those writing things, and it was just like create a haiku, or they showed us what it was, and something about it, I just took to it. And then we had like a short story competition. And then from there, I didn't see it as nothing special. It was just create a story about something. And then, but the haiku thing hit me because little did I know, I always say rhythm and meter. Some people have abbreviated rap as rhythm and poetry. Once I liked that you could rhyme the words and put them in a flow like I was doing earlier, as someone who didn't come up playing instruments, that got into it and then got into the singing, that was kind of my gateway to open the doors. Now, because now I could see it as a blessing. The schools didn't have music programs, so we had to find our way. And, through us in that era, we found it through the ciphers. The ciphers were just gatherings. And now I can look back on it. It was a really spiritual experience. As they say, the lotus flower can only come in the mud. So because you had people like DJ Clue selling mixtapes on the Ave, you had legendary DJs, you had murals. And because I was just a stone's throw from the Ave, and my mom worked on the Ave in the Coliseum block, 165th and Jamaica Avenue, for those who don't know, I was able to walk and experience culture. Specifically, I give credit is Black culture. The Black culture that came from the church, they came from blues, they came from jazz. I didn't know this then, but this is me looking back on it, that I was filled with culture in my neighborhood, and just something in me was innate. We crack jokes on each other, right? Going to the store, we break bread. So amongst that lack, there was this abundance that I always feel. Corporations know this about the hood, and connecting to what you said to bring the story full 360 is in systemic structures such as capitalism. They remove the arts and they say, oh, this arts got removed from the systems for test prep, for you need to be this, you need to be ready for this, and we don't need these extracurricular things. They need to go. But really, the way that you thrive in anything is through creativity. To even to play to the message of this very episode of this show, is creativity is really the only thing that pushes us forward. Because to think of an out-the-box idea, to think of something that isn't there, you have to use your imagination. And it's said with hip-hop didn't invent anything, but it reinvented everything. I love that quote. I don't know who the original person who dropped that quote was, but that showed me that out of nothing, your imagination, you can right there, the snaps and a melody. And just that does not require the instrument. And I'm so glad that that was my foundation. And because I grew up in a community, was very ethno-diverse, very big culture, I wanted to do this in community. I wanted to commune in the ciphers, and it was just at first to be dope. The idea just, if these people I thought were nice would say that I was nice, that would mean the world to me. Now I could say we're looking for rites of passages as young men. We look for ways to express ourselves, whether some people do it through their clothes or what outfit they wear or how they talk or what their slang was. And for me, it was through expressing that, through bending these words into the melodies, and then from there, I would say now looking back on it, I realized that systemic structures, once they saw what was created in these impoverished, have not, quote unquote, communities, they created an industry around it. And then, as you said, we grew up in the era where there was, hip hop originally started as a resistance form of art to go against oppression, same way jazz did, same way blues did, same way gospel did. This is all rooted in freedom to me. But once corporations got a hold of it and they made the words popular, they were able to extrapolate just the art form and take away the culture. So then that's what I think for me when I saw it change. It's funny because people now call the 90s the golden era, but if you listen to the music in the 90s is when they started saying, yo, something's off. And it was because of now I know corporatization, the connection to the prison industrial complex, the promotion of hyper-violent music. You spoke heavily about the crack epidemic in these eras. They needed someone to pick up these lifestyles. They needed someone to do it. And what unfortunate better way for them to market a certain lifestyle that would fill jails than promoting it through art and music. And it wasn't that people didn't make all types of music or hip hop, a certain type. There was always all flavors. I want to always give credit to what all styles existed, but they took one style, which was particularly around violence, oppression, and that, and they popularized that through marketing, media, and promotion. And then they created something that other people saw. This person went gold and platinum, and they knew that people had intrinsic desires. And then I started to know. There's a great interview by Ice Cube where he talks about it when he did Today Was a Good Day, when Common did I Used to Love Her, I believe around 93. Artists started saying, hey, there's something up here. Something's being pushed. Because in the beginning, around that 70s to 80s era, there was a diversity in the musical styles. It was live instruments, even in hip hop, Sugar Hill Gang, everything. And then what I noticed is once they saw that this could promote something, it was used as a tool for marketing and to promote hyper corporatism and the capitalist construct. So I would say that circled back into the community. The music programs got defunded because it used to be standard where you'd at least learn to play a little recorder or have a little piano class, even in the hood, you know, and a lot of great musicians came out of public school music programs. So that's when I saw when they removed the cultural component and started defunding musicianship. And that's why I encourage everyone, if you're a rapper, like, yo, learn, now that we have access to the internet now and this, like, please study music and study the greats 100%. That are there, as you know.
Yo,
so,
no, that's incredible. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, my brother. Thank you for that thorough history into yourself, into the culture, into the time, and essentially to how we got here. You know, one thing, you know, you were mentioning, you know, the instruments and encouraging people to learn, like really study music. What I realized as an artist who doesn't make music, right? Like I'm a, you know, I guess a communication artist, right? Multimedia artist, right? Through film, writer. So I don't make music, but I do spoken word. And what I've learned is that, as a lover of music and as an artist myself, that when you really study music, it's like studying the frequencies of the universe, right? Of nature, right? Which is then able to tune in deeper to yourself, right? And so if I think that some people realized how powerful music was, right? That music was a way that people can be empowered in themselves. It can empower the people around them. And so I think, obviously, you know, as you mentioned, it was, you know, a systemic plot to remove certain, you know, programs and access from certain communities, not all communities, but certain communities.
Exactly.
Right? Latin communities.
Richer zip codes kept their music programs, never lost them. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's just interesting. It's just interesting, you know, when you really think about it, how although we might not have known how powerful the arts were, you know, years ago, right? Specifically those of us who were born in the 80s, maybe our parents didn't know, coming out of, or being in the crack era, just coming out of, you know, real bad spat with heroin and stuff like that. A lot of drugs were destroying our communities from the 60s to the 90s, really, right? So people may not have been aware, but we did it anyway, right? Although we may not have been aware of what we were doing, we sit outside in front of the building, or we sit outside on the stoop.
It was something in us,
right? We hit something, we beatbox.
Yeah.
We just knew how powerful it was, right? So yeah, so speak to that innate knowing that we have, those of us who are, you know, closer to, I guess, the origins of time in the land. Like how is that? Like, yeah, how do we know that innately, that like music is so powerful like that? What is that?
Yeah, I will say, you know, it's ancestral to a lot of our DNA. You know, my family's from the West Indies, and I always trace it back to Blackness because, you know, Africa is the origin of civilization, right? And the drum was our first communication tool. We used to, before speakers and certain things, drum circles would gather, because if you don't have a speaker, if 20 of us are doing the same beat, boom, 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 that will literally amplify across. And I've learned in my studies of music and life and anthropology even that we communicated with each other through rhythms, through signals, right? Even now, slang changes, right? Every couple years, we went from yo, what up, fresh, Gerps, right? Like, we are constantly playing with tones and sounds, right? We are born, even a person who might not speak, they breathe. We have a heartbeat. This is innate to us. That's why a lot of things get westernized, or, going from Eurocentric, to trace it back to Afrocentric, which goes into our DNA and our spirit, our heart. You've seen me do this at shows. Put your hand on your heart. Do you feel a beat? Say something over that beat. You are officially a musician. You've composed something on a beat. And I always taught music like that, because we're taught sometimes this is C or this is a note. Those are just vibrations, right? But the vibration that occurs, the original is the drum, right? It's that beat, and that is innate to us. But what happens is, if we don't silence the noise around us and go back, and that's a meditative way, if you really think of it, to be so silent that you could feel your heart beat, right? You actually have to reduce thoughts to be present. And that's the idea of being a musician, to listen to what's going on around you, and to add your own little pocket, your rhythm or harmony or anything to this composition that is life. So I say that, it's a remembering that this is innate, but to remember that, you have to remember, right? Put back together the pieces. You have to put them back together. So I tell people, remember what you are. Remember that ancestry is in your DNA, generations and generations back, and it is accessible. And that access to information is a world of infinite knowledge. So especially people might be, I don't have an instrument. I didn't have an instrument. No one taught me to play until later on. But I just said, no, I am the instrument. So instead of making music, become the music. Literally, you are literally by nature making music every time you exist, because vibration is there and there is a sound. Your heartbeat makes a sound. Your moving of your hand, a breath makes a sound. Everything is sound and vibration. It is your innate human right to be a musician. That's why I say we just forget that is music, literally to do things over your beat. So I say, if you are aware that you are working over that beat, you're making a song. Your life is a song, no cap. You know what I mean? We out here. So I would really want people to remember that and sit in a room and listen to what comes up to you. That's why I think freestyling and freeing your style deeply connects to jazz, deeply connects to gospel. It's a spiritual experience of listening to yourself and creating over your beat. So that is, you're doing it whether you know it or not. So just remember that. That's what I say. Remember.
And then in remembering, that's so incredibly powerful. And I just want to add, in remembering, we are able to then be intentional.
Facts.
Right? We're able to be intentional then because once we remember that every move we make, right, is music, right, is poetry, is art, is expression, every sound, every word, every thought, right, every step we take, right, then we can say, okay, what song do I want to create, right? Like what do I want to compact? What do I want to comprise, right, together, right? What do I want to compose, right? What do I want to bring together to create a finished product, right? And the finished product could be the day, it could be the month, the week, right? And something you said reminded me of Nina Simone, who said an artist's job is to reflect the sign of the times, right? To reflect the sign of the times. So talk about that a little bit, right? Talk about other times in history, right, that you are aware of, whether music, whether painting, whether speaking is also an art, language arts.
Yes,
right? Talk about some time that you are aware of that artists use their gifts to address social issues.
Yeah. Art is a voice. It has been said that art is supposed to be a voice for the voiceless, meaning that, as you know, in your work is moral healing, our job is to amplify something, right? Because human experiences are all subject to the spectrum of emotions, which we all face. And we all know a great song is something that makes you feel something, regardless of I want to go out and have a good time. I want to change the world. And, artivism, shout out to, I think I first came across the term through studying bell hooks and getting around in the civil rights era and that. And I realized, one of my favorite songs, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, you know what I mean? Yes. There's a football game in the background. You can look it up. Like he had a Detroit Lions game playing. He was watching what was going on during riots. The Vietnam War was heavy, right? If you look at it, even in indigenous cultures, when one tribe would go against another or they would want rain, let's go hit these drums so that the rain could come for these crops. Let's go into these spaces and places where our being could sing and chant. And if we notice, when someone passes on, there's music at a funeral. When someone gets married, there's music at a wedding, right? If you notice, these are ceremonial practices where music has always been found. And in these ceremonial practices, we create what is ritual. Ritual is also known as routine, right? And structure. There is a form of this. And once again, connecting it back to remembrance, I know that the plight of an artist, see, that's the difference between, to me, just being a poet or an artist, right? Someone could be a painter, someone could be a guitarist, someone could be a poet, right? All these things are fine, but I think what makes a poet an artist, or a guitarist or musician an artist, is to tell a story. Which is a story that is connected to some form of feeling or emotion. Once again, because anyone could put some pretty words together, right? We could grab, I could say dog, cat, plant, guitar, ceiling. Then someone could say, yo, that was deep, right? And I'm just putting random words together. I could put words together. But when I just say, the ceiling was crumbling slowly with the weight of the water falling below me from the broken stairs. Now that's art. That's art. That's art, right? So like both of them are technically poetry or words, right? But you see what you felt when you started tapping, and look what you did. You started, woo, that's something, right? And you start laughing, and now I'm smiling too because you're smiling. So like you see, like this is, I got the goosebumps. Look at that, right? You see, still to this day, like it's innate. It's innate. So that's what I would say in literal real time. And art, that's the difference between being an artist or just your craft. Like, you know, and sometimes I started out just trying to put nice words together or do this or play a fancy scale. I was there, but I think eventually you want to tell a story, because what Maya Angelou, the great Maya Angelou, said is people might not remember what you said or what you did, but they remember how they felt. So I think story and communication is there. So it's innately to it. Once again, in all forms of culture, we have found a way to tell story. And innovation, to me, I always give credit to the universal blackness that is created in all things, which is space too. We leave space, which is that space for you to come in and say, whoo, you know, the artist isn't an artist without a canvas or an audience, right? You could have all the songs on your hard drive, but until you share it, even with one person, you take that art out there. And then we know, you know, you've dealt with me for a while. Activism for me is activating our organism to its highest potential. So that form of activism and using art to activate is innate. And that's how we all get great. You know, it's all there because you just grow. And that's it, man. So we're here, man. Thank you for that's a beautiful question.
Of course, my brother, incredible. And you know, you mentioned something that you mentioned the civil rights. Right, you mentioned a few things. You mentioned the civil rights movement. You mentioned Vietnam War, and I want to go back something on my website. Right, so this thing that we're talking about. It comes from my recent blog post, right? Recent article, which is the intersection of art and activism and how creativity drives social change. And so on the site in the article, I speak about specifically the fusion of art and activism is not new, right? Like when I speak to people or when I say the word artivism, people are like, oh, what does that mean? And it's crazy because part of me is like, how don't you know what it means? Like, is artivism, like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory by the word.
People don't know. And I realized that a lot of people haven't done the study that we've done, right? So we are fortunate in that way, right?
That's
like
true.
A lot of people in this planet, and a lot of people have done the study, but so many more haven't. And so in that, I just wanted to just share a little bit, a few key movements, I guess, in history. So like during the civil rights movement, there were artists like Jacob Lawrence, right, and Romeo Bearden, who depicted the struggles and triumph of African Americans, right, using the movement. When we talk about anti-war protests, right, during the Vietnam War, artists such as Yoko Ono and John Lennon, right, used their art to protest against violence and advocate for peace. Right. Or when we talk about, Pablo Picasso, right, the Guernica, right, by Picasso's masterpiece, which was created in response to the bombing of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War, right, it's still a powerful anti-war statement. And when we talk about now, when we talk about especially using graphics, right, like graphics has been, like, we've always used signage, but now with the addition of graphics and billboards and with social media now, like, we're able to use art in a more rapid way, right, to address issues that we face as a society. So let's move forward, right? Speaking about the past, right? Because we can go all the way back. We can go back to
Yeah.
martial arts, right? But let's
Yeah.
come to present day.
Yes, sir.
Again, you've traveled, right? You've been in
Mhm.
Berlin, right? You've been on the
Yeah.
West Coast, right? You
Mhm.
interacted with so many people. Who are some people that may be popular that the world knows, right? That you may be inspired by, or you like their artivism, right?
Mhm.
And or who are some people that the world may not know of that you may have come across in your work that you're like, wow, this person is fusing art and activism in a unique way. Talk a little bit
Hmm.
about those who may be already on a global scale and those who
Yeah.
may just be like unknown only to a few.
Yeah. Wow, man. There's so many greats. The first one that popped into my head that, a couple years ago I really started studying was low key Charlie Chaplin, man. If you look into Charlie Chaplin, low key was a legend. First of all, he
Yeah,
was an immigrant. His
yeah,
mom was in the asylum at the time, going through illegal tortures that are no longer allowed this day. And, from growing up in a household that had mental health, my pops battled with schizophrenia. My brother dealt with bipolar and schizophrenia and drug addiction. So I grew up around those kind of things. And when I studied Chaplin, because you just know that character in the silent films,
mhm,
but I didn't know that he was composing all that music, and
mhm,
he created United Artists, which was a big inspiration for creative expressions, where he at the time he got 1 million in like 1914 or some early time. Imagine what a mill back then was worth, right? That might have been like some crazy number. That's a fun fact to see what a mill then was. He was an original star of silent films, and he created the character, and this is a great story, called the Tramp. And you could see what happened is he went in back at a lot of things were theater, and theater was segueing into film because film was new. So film did not have music because it was silent films, and words used to come in. And in the theater, this is a good funny story. They used to hire musicians that would have to play during the music when the movie was playing. And later on, as early film started using vinyl recordings, they started putting music in between the stints to give the musician a break so they wouldn't have to play there. And then they started recording music. So like film and recording music was there, and he ended up buying a block in California, which became his studios. And he, in the early 19th century, early 20th century, was doing that work on his own, and he was encouraging other artists to create and own that, and he built his own studio. So that's why all his movies were legendary, because he was early in it, and then he did it all in house. I didn't know that till I studied him. So he is someone who I know, people know the name Chaplin, but I don't think they know how deep it was. And he encouraged artists to have their rights and build community. And he was also against the corporatization. When Hollywood started coming in, they offered him all this money to like dumb down his thing. And his first speaking role, where he plays like a Hitler-esque character in a movie, the legendary speech of his first talking role, he speaks literally artivism in that great speech. You'll see him as like the fake Hitler character, but it was such a powerful movie because you're thinking he's talking about Nazi Germany, and he's really talking about America. And then he got kicked out of the country. Edgar Hoover and the FBI put him on the wanted list. They dig up his immigration files. They saw that he was born foreign, and they literally kicked him out of the country. And then he was only brought back, I think, in the 60s to receive an award from the Film Academy after being kicked out and sent back to Europe because his work was causing so much change. They try to label him communist and all these kind of things. So he's someone, I think, a known person that people might not know how deep this story is. But if you look up some documentaries or just dig in the crates on YouTube and watch his films, you will see artivism in an early essence from black and white from the beginning of film. So he's someone that I would say is known, but people might not know the depth. And I was someone who knew of the icon, but I went in and researched. I would say someone lesser known. I'm gonna give big credit to.
So hold on. I want you to talk about somebody that specifically that is now current, right? Not someone from then, someone now current who's similar to Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, talk about somebody
Yeah,
today. making
Could it be someone in music or in any field of art in general?
any field of art, anyone who you're inspired by who is using art and activism to drive social
Yeah,
change. That's
there's so
that's
many,
a lot of
man. You know, obviously I draw so much inspiration. There's some local hometown heroes I got, but I'll try to give someone I don't know, but just the work inspires me. So you know, I don't play in. I have a lot of amazing artist friends that
yeah,
y'all
you
hit
do.
me up. Y'all add y'all to the Decipher. You'll meet them. They're amazing. But in
Mhm.
terms of someone who I'm inspired by in more modern times, I would say there is a band called Sons of Kemet where there's a saxophonist, a tuba player, and two drummers, and I saw them live. And they're Niger. They're the brother from there is of Nigerian descent who grew up in the UK, and his music. I caught him at Summer Stage last year, and it was one of the most mind blowing things. And because his music doesn't really use words, but he tells you such a strong story, and his
Mhm.
videos involve dance. Man, he really inspired me. And then he chose recently, because he's gotten so comfortable on the saxophone, to let go of the saxophone and like start again. And you know, he's yeah, the Sons of Kemet, you know, look them up. They've done some great records. They're relatively well known, but they're not a household name. So but their music, literally, there was a pulse in their music that teleported me when I watched them live at Summer Stage, that blew me away. So that was like one of the most impactful things I've experienced musically recently. There's also, I would say, man, there's this artist named Stromae from Belgium. He had a great record in 2015 that called Papa Ute. Kanye did a remix to it, but everything he did with the videos and the music and the clothes was so holistic. And Stromae is like maestro backwards, and it's really powerful. So Stromae and I are two that I would say, and he did a great songs that are connected to a lot of themes. And after he did that one album that was big, you know, changed the world a lot, he took a big break and he stopped. And I was like, wow, it was great to see an artist who at the peak of their fame and success, he was underground for a while, got that big hype, and then he chose to
Mhm.
like pause, get married, have a family, and then now he's been recently like coming back and doing tiny days. So I appreciate artists who know how to take breaks. I appreciate artists who know how to like not just feel a slave to these industries, and create things that I think are felt on a vibrational level. So those two, I would, Sons of Kemet and Stromae, if I had to pick two
Man, man,
that are
powerful,
from this era. Yeah.
powerful. You know, I think, you know, humans, one of our, I guess, greatest tragedies in humanity is that we forget, right? We forget those who came before. Not only do we forget a lot of times, you know, those who came before us, sometimes we are so invested in those who came before us that we ignore those who are with us now, right?
That's
We
so true.
forget that right now, right? We get so enamored by the past, and you know, we remember the, you know, the civil rights era. We remember, you know, back in ancient times, and it was like this, and people used art to do this. People are still using art, right? People are still using
Out
art to raise
here,
awareness. People are still
right in
using
your own
art,
neighborhood. Yeah.
literally right in your own neighborhood. The the
They're here.
the issue, I think, a lot of times is we think it's supposed to look like something else, right? Or supposed to sound like something else.
Yeah.
Whereas that may be, you know, it may be some truth to that, but take it for what it is, right? Look at a thing for what that thing is, not how it compares to something else, because it's
That's
always going to be worth less if when you do that. When you compare something that came before you to something that's with you, you're always going to look at the thing with you as not as impactful, because you
mm-hmm.
in result of the thing that came before you
You
as
seen
the
the
thing that
results of the
happened.
OG. Yeah.
So it's hard to see the impact,
Mm.
right? When you're living in it. And so I think that that's something I mean, I guess I can ask you, as someone who is doing this work, not just as an artist but also as an activist,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to shift that? Like, what can we do? Is there anything that we can do now as artivists, as hardivists, as those committed to using art, you know, based solutions to drive social change? What
Mm.
can we do to make our contemporaries, the people who we are living with, our families, our friends, our colleagues, more aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it, right? Because
Mm.
we are, some of us are creating art specifically and intentionally to raise awareness about certain issues and to bring attention to certain,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, whether it's racism, classism, you know, whether it's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sexism, whether it's mass incarceration, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's right, like we forget also that literature is art, right? Michelle
It is.
Alexander wrote the new Jim Crow. That is art, right? Addressing a major issue of mass incarceration, right?
Yeah.
And criminality and politics and things like that. So, yeah, what can we do? Is there anything we can do as artivists to, I guess, make our people more aware of what we're doing, while we're doing, and get them involved?
Yeah, man, it goes back to something we were talking about earlier. Tell your story. It's story. Like your story. That's why I love what you do, man. You document yourself so well, and you keep sharing a story, right? And you are the keeper of your story.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people are trained to think that their day-to-day life isn't like you said, is not enough, or those experiences that are seem the most things that we gloss over are actually
Mm-hmm.
the things that connect deepest to most
Mm-hmm.
people. So I feel tell your story, and I feel like tell your story in a unique way, just like when I was telling the story about, like, the
Yeah,
leaky faucet coming down to the floor underneath, right? Tell it with your sauce, tell it with your swag, your salsa, whatever you got, like put your foot in it.
yeah,
Even when you're talking to someone, tell that, you know what I mean? Talk your shit like no one else. So people
yeah.
remember you. Put your foot in it and just really express yourself to the highest possible way. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where creativity births creativity. It's like the candle story. A candle can light 100 other candles without losing its flame, It's real. So, whoo,
No, it
it,
is.
it hits me, man. It hits me to say that, and just like look at your day-to-day experiences and write them down, like document it. Like I hum things on voice notes and I just listen back. I tap my foot. I write things in a journal. I draw a doodle. And just that little spark, that one spark could light a whole thing up, man. And I feel like don't throw anything away. Like sometimes you write one line, keep that line. You wrote drew one little doodle, keep that doodle. Archive yourself. I've heard it is called archivism. You know what I mean? Like archive, document, and see the value in your work and see the value in your perspective, because the way that you see what is going on is like no one else. People have identical twins and your perspective is uniquely one of one. That's why the world never says we got enough poets, we got enough filmmakers, we got enough authors. The world is always welcoming us to add on and contribute. So tell your story,
Mhm.
document using archivism, as I'd like to say, and then
Mhm.
take that little bit and enhance and build upon it. Because once you say one word, one letter, one scribble, that can be built upon, and you can build it just like how the most complex machine starts with one nut and one bolt connecting together, and then
Mhm.
building up the most grandiose thing could be broken down into simplicity, and put
Mhm.
that with story and emotion, and put your
Oh,
foot in it and express
it's a
yourself to the
good one.
highest level. And that's what I would say is a great way to do it, because everyone has this is innate. This is not something that has to be taught to us. We just got
Mhm.
to remember, and that's a
Remember,
punchline. Just keep coming to me.
absolutely,
Remember what you have,
absolutely.
remember your story, remember what you did today, and remember to share it. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. Remember, that's something I often say. Remember, remember who you are. Remember why you came here. Right? It's something, I remember. Remember studying like theology in religion, years ago, and I remember coming across something that said, the difference between Jesus the Christ and the other prophets is that Jesus he never forgot who he was. Like they
Mm,
said, in this story is like Jesus the Christ remembered from birth that he was here to liberate the world in some way, right? Where so
yeah.
many of us forget, and through trial and tribulation we remember later, right? Some younger than others, obviously, but that was interesting because um I believe that, for example, my daughter is about to be 8 in a few months, right? And since she could talk, she's been saying she came from another planet, right?
Yeah.
Since she could talk, she's been saying that she came from another planet. She remembers being in her mother's womb. She remembers being in a place that was dark, that was a little cold, a little wet, right? And then she remembers moving, and then she remembers it being bright and crying. So she remembers being born,
Hmm.
right? And obviously, I think that there's a thing that says humans only use 8 to 12% or 12 to 14% of our brain, and it's like,
Hmm.
what if you could use more of your mind, right? Like, how powerful
Yeah.
would you be? How much would you remember? And how can you get to not just what if you can use more of your mind? Can you use more of your mind? The answer is
Yeah.
yes. How? That's the next question, is how. And it's through stillness, through silence, right? Through meditation, through daily
Hmm.
practice, right?
Yeah.
Through daily expression as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So real quick, I wanted to just talk about a few people who contemporary are using art to do great things, right? So there's an artist, a Chinese artist, I think it's Ai Weiwei, who uses his art to criticize the Chinese government and advocate for human rights, right? Remembering that like paint is art, right? Like not just music, not just your voice. Like how can you say something without saying it? So one of my brothers, one of my favorite artists, who I knew before I met him. I just met him a few years ago, but I knew of his work for a long time prior, and I'm honored to have collaborated with him on my recent art exhibit, Uncut Art. Right, Uncut Art is an incredible street artist in New York City who obviously he's a human, right? He speaks, he has a face, but he covers his face, and his
Yep.
art is really his words. His art is his message, right? He spray paints throughout New York City and every other city that he's been in on concrete cement. Protect your heart,
Yeah.
right? 1111, make a wish, right? Just reminding people of because part of activism, I think a lot of times people use activism to be against something, which is part of it, right? Like you have to be active in your community, go against something trying to stop you. But I like how you use when you talk about activism, activating your own organism, and I
Mm-hmm.
call art in that way, where he's using his art to put a message of self-reflection and introspection, not so much to hate the government, not saying F the NYPD,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Like all of that is cool, is part of it, but can we use art and activism to inspire people to become better humans?
That part.
Right, to become humans that are more engaged in their neighborhood, that are more engaged in their own relationships with self and with others. Can we use art to do that? And that's something that you talk about,
Yeah.
right? Using activism or using art in that way, art and activism to
Yeah.
act
To really, yeah, to
like
activate
yourself.
it. Yeah. No, no.
All right.
You gave me something right there. Mm-hmm.
So how did you? I guess how did you come to that consciousness? Like, what was it? Like, was it like if you could remember a time when you realized that that's what activism was? It wasn't like, yes, part of it is resistance, part of it is all of that stuff, but the other part of it is just on you as an individual. Like, how did you come to that consciousness?
Yeah, man. Like anybody, I always want to admit, as I mentioned earlier, I started like how most artists or musicians start, right? I was just trying to find myself and be heard. Maybe I didn't feel heard or seen in my family. And I just, I started out going to the open mics and this. And then I started writing songs, recording songs. I went to audio school. I learned how to record, and I did those things. And I, started with putting out CDs and then figuring that out. And then I was like, okay, well, I want to write a song about something. And then I started writing songs with messages and things. And, post the 9/11 era, I was doing the more traditional form of activism in the other way, right? And I remember things happening. I remember a lot of people, our age going to the military and just straight like, yo, I'm out. And then, I had one of my friends turn into a prison guard in Afghanistan, joined the Marines, became a Navy SEAL. And then, he killed several people, never came back the same, and I was like, wow, this is crazy, right? Like, and we both were on a thing, but he chose, I'm going to sign my life up to this and I'm going to go this. And I chose an art music route. And I was so blown away when he came back. And like, he definitely had PTSD and a whole bunch of things that happened for him in there. And I was like, wow, there got to be another way. And, and I was going to more traditional rallies and protests, right? And of course, I learned about my city council and I learned things through the legal system. And I remember getting so hurt and frustrated, brother. And I know you know about this very, very well. I just felt I was hitting a glass ceiling, meaning I could see beyond it, but I couldn't get beyond it. I was just like, there's got to be more. And kind of like the artist who you mentioned, I was like, well, you know what I can change? I can change myself. And the way to change the world, I think, is enough people change ourselves, our thoughts, our belief system, and the way we treat people. The world, therefore, will change. And that's what inspires other people to change. I love in the Buddhist quote where they talk about the Four Noble Truths, that everyone will suffer. You are the cause of your suffering. You can alleviate yourself from suffering. And in alleviating yourself from your suffering, you will inspire others to alleviate themselves from the suffering. Not you will heal them. They will see that you have fought your battles and healed yourself. That's why I love when you always keep it real with me. And that's the most inspiring thing, to be vulnerable, right? To open up. And that's when my activism started changing, because I was like, wait a minute, I was yelling at these protests till I lost my voice. I
Same,
was coming
same.
home pissed. I was angry. I had to smoke like 10 blunts because I was stressed. I was like, I was done, bro. And I just couldn't maintain. I was like, yo, I can't be this angry, mad at the world person my whole life. It was I went through health issues. And that's also what led me to, like, getting into meditation, exercise, and diet, because like I was like, I could do all these things, but if I don't start with my own body, right, none of this is going to matter. And I just saw how many people, even on that other side of activism, the more conventional act, I just saw the contradictions there too. Some women would tell me they were assaulted by this person and that, and I'm like, man, this is just as crazy as this. And that's why I found, like, shout out to the Tao, you know what I mean? The Tao Te Ching, I know me and you was heavy in it, the way in the middle and the balance. And when I really started thinking, what are my actions? What are my thoughts? So, I break up my thoughts and things into things like, what am I doing for my upliftment into myself? And how do I pour into my cup so that it can overflow into community? So not depleting myself, but being so naturally abundant that I can bring that forward. And what that ended up for me is I started doing events. I started hosting first events at the 5 Spot in Brooklyn. And I started making sure every time we did an event, there would be a clothing drive. There'd be a food drive. We would donate books for the incarcerated, paperback book collection. I would just find the theme every month: canned food drive, coat drive for this, for the winter. I would just pick a theme. And then eventually people who connected to those themes started coming in. And that started due to the murder of a friend. My friend Matthew, shout out to Matthew, Optimus Ram, that he died and he was murdered violently. And then I was like, man, I got to keep this dude's memory alive. And that is what activated my organism. He was the first one to show me the Tao. And then I just remember reading the Tao and not really understanding it because it looks like contradictions. But then you have to reread the Tao is like, it's so beautiful because when you change, the passages change.
100%.
Just like any good scriptures, you have to go back to them when your consciousness evolves. So same thing with activism. I went back to activism as my consciousness evolved. I identified my anger. I identified certain things, and I had to start healing and dealing. And in that, I started to curate spaces where others could do the same. I took the energy of ciphers from hip hop, as you've seen, decipher, to break down the code, to decipher something. And I just started helping people in whatever way I knew how to know I'm going to always be a permanent student and teacher. I'm not trying to be the best at anything, but if every day I could get a little bit better, I'm building it brick by brick. So that was really what activated in me, literally through pain, trials and tribulations, through failures and successes, and knowing that we're created by the Creator to create, and we're ever evolving here. And I forgot, I think this might have been a Bell Hooks quote that says, activism is my rent due for living on this planet. You know what I mean? Meaning that all I'm here to do is use what gifts Source gave me to somehow leave this place a little bit better than I found it, to offer my perspective. And if I did that, if one person, one candle was lit, one person at that show came out, one person went home, yo, I'm gonna go write this poem now, or someone came up to me, man, I didn't pick up my guitar in 5 years. I went home and played for 2 hours. Like, it's those little things that mean a lot to me. Me and you have talked to the moon and back on it, brother. Like, I'm so honored by you just thinking of me. That's why you hear me up talking, like, oh yeah, let's go. I said, yo, I'm staying outside till I gotta come back and do the Sugar Ray thing. I took a little 10-minute meditation, get right. I made a smoothie, get right. You see, this is it. This is it. And I feel like, please, 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 anyone who sees, do not think it's too small. Nothing is too small. The power of one is huge. The one push-up, the one breath, the one word, the one journal entry, the one conversation can change a life. And if you notice, it is small changes that do change the world. And I think we've been conditioned to think these grandiose ideas. I got to be a multi-platinum, this and this. I got to, even on social media and all the file, it's all there. Just archive it. And if it's archived, it lives on. And you want to create things that will outlive your human body, and your good deeds outlive you. The way you treat people outlives you. That stuff carries on. So, that's what it was for me. Doing things that I know are going to last longer than my physical body can. And it's not that hard to big somebody up and show them love. That's why, the mantra, we say show love out here, because why not? Like, love is always a choice. And love isn't always, I'm gonna be soft. Love is like, nah, I can't go there with you. Love is
Yeah.
I'm setting a boundary. Love is, yo, I can't deal with this anymore. Love is also the most hard disciplined thing. Like a great parent would show you love, right? But they will also tell you and check you when you wildin' or doing whatnot. So I feel like come at each other with love, go with depth, and then really, really activate that organism. It is an internal thing, because if you go within, you're never gonna be without, you know. So
I
that's my
love
thought.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. That is so powerful. That last thing you said, it made me remember years
Mhm.
ago I was struggling financially, and
Mhm.
I was talking to a homegirl of mine. All right, we were in the train station, getting on the train. We were going somewhere. And I was just sharing my struggles and frustrations with myself and things like that. And she said, a prophet will never be without, right?
Mm.
And at the same time, shared on social media some frustrations. My homeboy, who I never met, right? So obviously him and my homegirl don't know each other, but he said literally it might have been the same day or a day before or after. He said the only time you will struggle is when you stop using your voice.
Mm.
So they both just hit me. It made me remember, like, who are you? Remember who
Who?
you are. Use your voice, use your gift, share, right? Express yourself, share your heart, share your talents, and you're gonna be right, right? Either the people are gonna help take care of you, or you're gonna be able to get in the
Something
position
will
where you
come.
generate the resources, right, through various ways to then put yourself in a better position, right? And so, yeah. That just made me think about that. And
That's a
something
beautiful
else you said
story.
that's really important that I want, those who watch this to remember and to be aware of is that when you think about the ocean, right?
Mm.
When you think about the ocean full of water, know that the ocean became the ocean by a million little drops consistently,
That's
right?
it.
Millions of drops consistently, repeatedly. And water is the most powerful element, right? Because of its persistence.
Hmm.
Water is soft, water is gentle, but water persists, and water puts out fire, right? Water can penetrate rock, right? Water can rust and ultimately degenerate metal pipe, right? Over time, right? Water's persistence, its consistency, its relentlessness, its resilience, right? Water also, it runs, right? Water is streaming down. There's a rock or a log. The water doesn't stop because of the log. The water becomes the log. The water
Hmm.
envelops the log. The water moves around. The water is flexible. The water is fluid,
Yeah.
right? The water to me is the greatest, uh I guess, and we are water, like the greatest form of like art to watch, right? Like
Yeah.
water is poetry, water dances, right? And we live in the area here in West Queens where in the East River runs north and south like the Nile, right? The
Yeah.
East River is a very,
Yeah.
very special sacred river that we live next to. So that means the
Me
energy
too.
here is very sacred. And so there has been, and there still is a lot of artists here in this area, right?
Yeah,
Artists
man.
using their talents to address social issues. So let's talk about some of the ones that you know personally, man. Talk about some of your friends, or you got a lot of
Yeah,
friends,
man. There's so much, man.
right?
Yeah,
Talk
there's
about
so
some of your
many,
friends.
man. You're gonna have to stop me when it is, because I got
Yeah,
so
shout
many,
some of
man.
them out, man. Shout some of them out.
Yeah,
Just
I'm gonna
shout some of
start
your favorite
shouting out.
artists.
I'm gonna start with some amazing women I know, man. Shout out to Jackie, amazing tattoo visual artist. She just did a tattoo ceremony, and shout out to Two Feathers, of course, doing the Reiki and the sound bowls. I want to thank all amazing women. Beth Bliss, Ayano, Hirose, these are Ayano can paint, she can sing, she can do so much. She's a master cook. Beth is an amazing poet and singer as well. Liz, the creative admin of CE, the matriarch. She's multifaceted maven. She does crochet, she sings, she studied opera in school, did all types of cool stuff. Thank you to all of them. And also I want to give a big shout out to even Emily, who's out here. She's an amazing visual artist and she's getting into her music. Natasha, who's been playing with the Borinquen squad and just doing the bomba music and expressing her poetry in theater, man. Shout out to Urban Bush women, man. So many amazing women. So I want to shout out the amazing women musician I know that are just incredible. They've been so many of my favorite artists are women. My Queens locals out here, man. You got my man Johnny Tornas on the sax. He's in Greece composing for a film right now. You got Tej and Jackson Heights always blessing it down. Been working 4 or 5 years with that man consistently. Man, we got so many people. Larry On out there in Briarwood, Manifest the artist, Guazabara holding down indigenous ceremony and playing the trumpet. Man, so many names, so many names. Yeah, man.
So many.
Divine from the Ya 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 Collective, amazing singer and artist herself. Luz, theater artist from there. Martha Diaz, one of my femtors who started a hip hop education center, you know, like all the way bringing hip hop to Lincoln Center, literally going bananas in there. So like, yeah, and also the founder of the Hip Hop Odyssey Film Festival. So so many visual artists. Also, man, shout out to the spaces and places. My man Whack One, Urban Vegan Roots, Freya. They held me down for a year. You know, like so many places, the spaces, the curators, the people. Shout out to Londrell, who I just produced his show with Londrell Live and Unplugged, and the opening artist Luciana, who was also Lucci for short. She came all the way from Canada doing her thing, and Emma, who's doing set design now. Man, like, yo, there's so much artists that are working together.
Yeah,
All of us are building these puzzle pieces. If y'all want to get in touch, hit me up on the thing right there, creativeexpressions.co. We put events out. We have a Decipher chat, Sugar Ray's in there, but stay in touch. There's a plethora of us, man, and we're here. We're all working together, and I love how some people have taken things from me and built on them and created their own, like Larry On did with the Electric Sound Collective, and people have sampled some elements from Show Love. You know, thank you for the ticker that showed up right there. You know, like, we're here. And I want people to reach out, like, get curious, have a question, put me on to artists, send me something in the DM that I don't know, because it's infinite. It is infinite and it is necessary. I also do want to thank our all the unsung artists, man. If you're creating and you've never put out work or never done it, just know that you're just as valid. If you make it, you did it, you know. So if you're watching this, just please know that you are there, and shout out to you. So like, I could go on with the names for days and years, but those are
I
just some
appreciate
names
you.
that I wanted to acknowledge and, you know, thank from the depths of my soul, because every one of those people I mentioned have directly trusted in the vision that I've had and trusted me with their art. And of course, bigger, we'll end it with E Major, man, one of my
Shout
favorites.
out
One
to
of
you,
the
Major.
people
That's my guy.
really
Absolutely.
taught me. He encouraged me to get on the instruments when I was still a little nervous and still like sticking to mainly rapping and making beats. He helped me take that leap of faith. And my man Romello Chandler from the South. These are amazing Black musicians that saw something in me as a musician before I even saw it in myself, man. So I credit them
Powerful.
for identifying that and encouraging me when I was being a baby again and learning to play and getting
Nice.
out of my comfort zone. So I thank you, and thank you to my mentors, Alan J. Palmer, Jack, who came from Jackie McLean, it came from Miles, that came from, you know, those are the people that really taught me to get down. Professor Keyboards, shout out to that dude from Merrick Boulevard in Jamaica who saw me at that Sam Ash and showed me how to do the do re mi. You know what I
Nice.
mean? It goes,
That's
those go
powerful.
on forever.
That's incredible, you know. And what I love about that, you know, one thing that you mentioned at the end is that lineage, right? Like a lot is lost when we forget, right? The lineage, those who came before us, those who came before us, who paved the way, those who showed us a blueprint, right, on how to use art to address social issues, how to use art to drive social change, how to use art to be active in your community. You don't gotta sit home no more wishing that things will be better. Right? You don't gotta sit home no more waiting for the government to make things better. Like why they keep figure out how you can use your creativity, right? If you sew clothes, figure out if you can sew clothes for people specifically, right, who need clothes, and or if you can use your sewing as a way to maybe highlight some issues, right? So maybe you can sew
Mm-hmm.
clothes that have certain messages in it, right? If you
Yes.
paint or if you like painting, don't yes, paint just for the sake of painting to, you know, heal yourself, which is also activism in your own personal body, but also paint messages that address issues in society, right? Whether it's related to self-love, right? Whether it's related to, you know, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
related to the environment or a certain animal that you may care about, right? Like there are so
Mm-hmm.
many issues, so many topics that, you know, is never too much attention to, and there's always a way that you can, you know, fuse your creativity into the, you know, addressing of that issue, into the raising awareness of whatever cause you care about, right? And
Big
so
facts.
yeah, man, thank you for doing this talk with me, my brother. Thank you for this discussion. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your
Oh
wisdom.
man,
Thank you
it's
for
an honor.
sharing your own experience. Thank you for highlighting so many greats, right, who are living today amongst us, as well as reminding us of some of those who came before
Yeah.
us, right? I believe wholeheartedly that um, art is key to liberation, right? Like we cannot have liberation without art, because like art is itself freeing. Art is expression, right? In and of itself. And so thank you, my brother. I love you, man. Shout out to the good brother Y here, man. Check him out. www.creativeexpressions.co. Get tapped in. He's on Instagram. Again, you can check the website, find all of the other
All
links.
the links are there. Y'all hit me up, man. Don't be a
Any of
stranger.
the services that he has to offer. He offers a lot. He helps a lot, man. He does a lot in the community and for just for the betterment of our planet, of our world, and for the advancement of humanity. Yo, my brother, I love you, man. Appreciate you. Have a good night. See you soon.
Big love, brother. Thank you for having me. Stay in touch. Anybody, reach out and let's have a combo. Da da ba ba da ba ba da boom.